All right, everybody, welcome back to the Bench Warmers Sports Talk podcast. And today we'll be warming the bench for a whole lot of sports. We'll talk Raptors, NBA, NHL, and get into some NFL predictions as that season kicked off on Thursday night and games continue throughout this weekend. As always, I'm Labi and I'm joined with Jacob Bussey. Jacob, how are you doing today?
Good, man. It's a little bit different today.
Yeah, and we are also excited to welcome the first guest to the podcast. Will you welcome Dre?
Thank you.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Excited to be on the podcast?
Very excited.
Nice. And so we will get into the main story of the last week, at least here in Toronto, and that is the Toronto Raptors are no longer defending champions in the NBA, as they are eliminated in 7 games by the Boston Celtics. Also going on in the NBA, the Lakers have eliminated Houston in 5 games, and in maybe a surprising turn, the Miami Heat knock out the Milwaukee Bucks as well in 5 games. But before we get into the other series, we'll start with the Toronto Raptors. So, Jacob, your thoughts on the Raptors series as a whole, the Game 7, anything you want to talk about?
It was a pretty pathetic series, honestly. Raptors did not deserve to be there, as long as they were. When you lose every game and you score under 100 points in every single one of those, that goes to show just how weakly offensive you are. But when you win by like 150, 120. So it's surprising that they were able to stay in that series that long. Game 7 was absolutely awful to watch. I lost a couple of pounds of hair pulling it out from the top of my head. I don't know what Pascal Siakam is out there doing. Like we were talking earlier with Jay said, he said 4 turnovers consecutively. So that spin move, it's just not working when you get to the playoffs. You know, granted, the Boston Floppers are very good at what they do.
Marcus Smart.
He looked like a fish out of water there every single game, and we don't have that player like we did last year. Like Kawhi was that guy. Kawhi was the guy who you could give to with 5 seconds to go and make that shot. Van Vliet shooting from Steph Curry range was irresponsible and honestly just a dumb decision. He's not making those shots. Norman Powell was one of the only guys out there I saw that played with heart. 10 points in the second overtime in game number 6. Man, I don't know what else to say about the series. It was awful. As a Toronto fan, I'd be disappointed. I don't blame... Again, it's not really just Siakam. It's kind of as a team, they just kind of gave up. Individual players shine more than others. And good golfing season now. Dre, what are your thoughts?
Like, it felt like that whole series where you weren't really watching the Raptors. Like, you were watching the Larry show and then the Van Vliet show. Game 3, the Anunoby show. Like, all season, that team was built on teamwork and that hard work. And they did it by committee. And the playoffs, I think Boston did a good job solving it, to be honest. Like, they solved Siakam, obviously, and then every night they compromised Lowry, compromised Van Vliet, and didn't really let anybody get hot the whole time. Like, Game 6, Lowry got hot and ended up being very clutch in that double OT win. But that whole series was very, like, you had to rely on different guys every night for the Raptors. It was never you can trust the whole team going together. It was Siakam's off this night and Lobi's off this night. You can't go to them. Van Vliet's struggling tonight, so Celtics earned it. Like, Celtics played incredible defense. Every win the Raptors have was never really comfortable, other than maybe Game 4. But the Celtics, every time they won, it was basically very convincingly, other than Game 7, obviously. But down the stretch, like, you kind of knew Boston was winning that game. A lot of plays were, like, down by 2 with a minute left. Norman Powell goes into a 1-on-3 rush, and Marcus Smart gets that chase down block. Marcus Smart's an outstanding defender. Jaylen Brown's there, too. I don't understand why Norman Powell goes on that rush, and then...
there's like 18 seconds left in the game. Yeah. You can slow down, run a half-court offensive set.
I know.
Like, you don't have to push something that doesn't need to be pushed.
And I think speaking to your point about normally they do it by committee, but it looked like it was just a lot more fragmented and it was one player or the other. I think the Raptors' defense did the same thing to Boston, where, you know, some nights Kemba had 5 points in 52 minutes in the double overtime game. Yeah. There were some games where Tatum wasn't at his best. You know, you had one game where Marcus Smart, I think it was game 2, where he hits like 5 3-pointers to open the fourth quarter in a row. Yeah, and then in another game, like, his shot's not falling. And so I think both teams had that. But I think what you said is the Raptors sort of are supposed to work by committee. Yeah. And you can tell that impacted the Raptors more because I think the Celtics just have better scoring options.
Yeah.
Where if Kemba has a game, then Tatum can have a game, then Jaylen Brown can have a game, then Marcus Smart can have a game, and that's kind of what happened. Each of those guys stepped up and won them a game, and you can argue Lowry won us a game, and Anunoby won us a game with that shot, but Siakam never really had a signature game in the series, which I think ultimately was a big issue for Toronto.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Celtics have a much more deeper team in terms of like guys that they can rely on to win you a game. Like Norm Powell was clutch, but Norm Powell's not going to win you a game over 4 quarters, right? Like he's going to hit big shots for you, and he did in that double overtime game.
Mhm.
But I think we all agree that double overtime game was like Lowry putting the team on his back.
And Lowry doesn't show up. We lose that game. We go home in 6.
Yeah, and I mean Lowry fouls out at the end of Game 7, and from that point on, it really looked like the offense didn't know what to do.
Lowry seemed like the only guy in Game 7 that like really wanted it. To be honest, it felt like Lowry knew that he had to play the best game of his life in Game 7 for him to win that. And like, although he didn't put up the stats, and everything, you can see him trying to make winning plays all game, and you can't fault Lowry for that. But then you look at guys like Van Vliet and even Powell, especially those two, Van Vliet and Powell down the stretch of games. It looked like they were just playing like, especially Van Vliet, it looked like he was playing for contract money. Like he wanted to put stuff on his resume so he could get paid.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Like there's no way down the stretch. I feel like for the last 5 minutes that fourth quarter, Van Vliet took 70% of the shots for the Raptors, and I don't understand when you got Lowry who was red out last game. And I know Siakam was struggling, but he's supposed to be your number one option, and especially when you got guys open. Van Vliet was playing like isolation basketball, and it was kind of hard to watch.
And the Raptors never played isolation basketball the entire season, so for them to turn to that in the last 5 minutes of Game 7 kind of seems like not the smartest thing to do, right? And I mean, especially because the Celtics went pretty small down the stretch, and you're not giving chances for Ibaka, who I thought Ibaka was probably the most consistent Raptor over the 7. I think like Lowry was the best player in the series for Toronto, but I think Ibaka was the most consistent in terms of he gave you more than maybe what you were expecting, where I feel like Toronto fans sort of expect Lowry to give you everything and more, and I think he kind of just further proved that he's the greatest Raptor of all time with the way he performed this series.
I think it goes to show the experience of Kyle Lowry in the playoffs and all the pressure. I don't think Siakam could handle it. I don't think he was used to having all this much. Like last year, Siakam was kind of like this guy who came out of the basement and kind of made his way to the attic, although all the pressure was on Kawhi. Because Kawhi was supposed to come here and win us a chip, which he did. But Kawhi knows how to handle pressure because he's been in the playoff finals before. That was Siakam's first finals. And he didn't have to worry about it as much because Kawhi's worrying about it. But this year, when you get paid the mega max contract, like the max you can get, you're expected to play like Kawhi. And because that pressure got to him, I don't think he was able to play like Kawhi.
Yeah, I think both coaches that whole series were like outstanding. I think you could see Nick Nurse was very frustrated at times in post-game conferences. Like he was trying to back up Siakam the whole time, and at some point you have to tell him that he's not playing good, and that's what he did. That's what he did in the pregame conference before Game 6. But Brad Stevens did a hell of a job that whole series, especially when the Raptors went small in that double OT win. Like they went to Daniel Tice on alley-oops. I remember in that second overtime, Daniel Tice had like 4 alley-oop passes, and if you're Brad Stevens, that's great play calling. Like you have number one guys like Tatum and Walker with the ball in their hands, but he got them to play team basketball and make smart plays and winning plays. And at the end of the day, his defensive strategy was great. He put Marcus Smart on Lowry when he saw he was heating up, and also that Celtics team, bad matchup to be honest. Like Siakam couldn't get anything going when you have guys like Jaylen Brown, Tatum, Smart. Those are all very versatile defenders.
Yeah.
Like those guys can guard basically all 5 positions, especially Marcus Smart. You saw Ibaka trying to post up Smart, and he got an offensive foul on him. They're very intelligent defenders, and Brad Stevens deserves a lot more credit than he gets for that.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think a lot of people agree that Brad Stevens is like a top 5, maybe even top 3 coach in the NBA. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are starting to put Nick Nurse in that category. And I'm not saying that he coached a bad series. I thought Nurse was a good coach, overall in the year, deserved to win Coach of the Year, did pretty well this series. But I think there are just like a couple of small details that he needs to work on. And I mean, he's a very new coach in the NBA, so I'm going to give him a pass. But you even look at in Game 3, the Anunoby shot, that wasn't the play that was drawn up. That was Lowry, calling an audible and finding him in the corner and Anunoby hitting the shot. So Nurse didn't draw that up. That was just Lowry doing it naturally. And I think that in Game 2, I believe, down the stretch in the fourth quarter, the Raptors just didn't seem like they could get anything done. And then in Game 7 down the stretch, I mean, you talk about the Norm Powell layup, driving 1-on-3. Why not call a timeout
Exactly.
in that moment? You're down by 2, 18 seconds left, and try to draw up a play. And so I feel like Nurse, I'm not saying Nurse deserves blame, but I think that Nurse could have coached those 2-minute situations a little bit better, especially with a Game 7 in the playoffs. Every possession matters, every second matters, every decision that your players make matters. And I don't know if giving the ball to Norm Powell and expecting him to dunk on Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart, and I think like Tatum was probably in the vicinity there too, or there's something going on. I don't know if that's necessarily the best move.
I think to Nick Nurse's credit, though, he did a great job neutralizing Kemba Walker that whole series.
Oh, yeah.
After that Game 3 win, he saw how special Kemba is down the stretch, and what he tried to do is just to make sure Kemba never gets hot, because when Kemba gets hot, he's not going to miss down the stretch. He's clutch, and especially like when they put a box and one on him, and they want like a triangle defense with like two guys running around. The only thing I wish didn't happen was that defensive strategy left a lot of corner threes.
Yeah.
When you watch the game, a lot of crucial corner threes. I remember, I think it was either Game 6 or Game 7, Celtics started, all 4 of their field goals were wide open corner threes. And that's like unacceptable. I don't know if that was Ignor's game plan to let those happen, or if it was the defender's fault for not closing out on those, but I feel like those were a lot of points that the Raptors kind of feel bad giving up, because those are inexcusable buckets to give up.
Yeah, and I think that's a good transition to talk about. I think defensively, there were some questions, but I think they were pretty solid defensively. I mean, I think Nurse is a defensive coach first and foremost. The Raptors are sort of built on their defense. But switching to the offense, because I think that's sort of where you start seeing a lot of problems. And Siakam's going to take a lot of the blame. I think we started talking about it earlier. I mean, I personally, I'll try to defend him, but I'll open it up to the two of you guys to sort of just talk about your honest opinions about Pascal Siakam, how he did. I mean, he hasn't played well, so he's deserving of any sort of blame. Jacob, your thoughts on Siakam?
Well, I'd like to defend him. He's a cool guy. You know, he's got a lot of potential there, but I think this whole situation is it's a one-time wonder. They saw him last year in the playoffs. They don't want him to go, so they're like, okay, we'll offer you the max contract so you can stay. You're going to be the guy. No pressure. You got this. And I just think it's the pressure that got to him. I think now, you know, Kawhi's gone. You don't have the guy anymore. You have to step up to be that guy. This is your second postseason that you've ever played, and now you are, you got everything on your back. You got the whole country's on your back. You got the whole team on your back, and you're not playing like it. You know, you're making dumb mistakes. You're turning it over 4 times in a row. 15 turnovers that whole series. Okay, 15 turnovers that whole series, which is an absurd amount. Most teams don't even make that in a whole game, and he did that himself in a whole series. I want to defend him. I really do. But when you're getting that much money, you're expected to have that much skill. And when you're not playing up to that much skill, then I got an issue with it. Let's reflate it to the Leafs, Matthews, or Marner, or Nylander, or Tavares. Tavares hit an open net when he should be making those shots. No worries, easy net. Like, if you're making that much money, you're expected to play under pressure. You're expected. The second he signed that deal, he should have realized the whole country is like expecting him to play up to that deal. So, he's coming back next year, and I expect him to be playing significantly better than he did this one, because that's what happens with experience. But this year, I'm disappointed. Like, the season doesn't matter. Once you get in the playoffs, it's how you play in the playoffs. And he didn't play the way everyone wanted him to. And I'm sure he's pretty, beat down on himself. Kyle Lowry mentioned to him, listen to the media, listen to what they have to say. That's how you get better. So I'm hoping he does, and I'm hoping he listens to what everyone says, and I'm hoping he takes the criticism, because it's nothing personal, but you didn't play like a Toronto Raptor. You played like a 905. It's ridiculous.
Trey, your
Absolutely, he underperformed, but I feel like it's pretty unfair from Raptors fans, and this is my perspective on it. If he does this next year in an environment where hopefully it's regular basketball and we're in Scotiabank Arena and the fans going crazy, no matter how much fans there are, maybe it's a little bit for social distancing, but I feel like this bubble environment, you're talking about a guy who only is playing professional basketball for 7 years. So it's not like basketball's completely second nature to him. So when you get off 6 months and then you're expected to go back and play at a high level in the playoffs, it's kind of unfair, especially in that environment. Because Siakam's a guy who was thriving off the crowd all season last year. Like, he's a guy in the regular season, when the crowd's going, and he's really feeling it. So I felt like it's very awkward for him, and I can't fault him too much, because I haven't really it's pretty abnormal environment to play in. So if he does this next year in the postseason, then we can start talking about Siakam's not clutch and all this stuff about like him being traded. I don't think he should get traded at all. I think
No.
that's outrageous for people to be talking about that. But this environment was just very tough for him, and he owned up to playing bad, and I give him respect for that. But I feel like next season is going to be a big test for him because this team could be going in many different directions, and likely he's going to be the guy next year because Lowry's getting older, so he's going to have more of the load on his back. And if he performs like this in the playoffs again, then we can have some serious questions. But I feel like this environment is not really a fair judgment for him, especially with all the time he took off. So that's just my thoughts on it.
But he's not the only one. There are 16 other teams there, or 15 other teams there that are playing in the same environment. So if you're expected to play the way he was expected to play, like there should be no, like LeBron doesn't care about the environment. He's playing like LeBron.
Yeah.
Kawhi is playing like Kawhi, and then you got Kemba Walker. Granted, he didn't play great, but Tatum or Butler, like these are guys who are not getting paid as much as he is, and they're not expected to do as much as he is, and the Heat are in the conference finals.
Yeah.
Like Antetokounmpo, he fell under pressure. Granted, he tried to carry the team on his back, and they just kind of could not get anything going. You question him. I would question him too. And if you say the experience, then you look at other teams, and they're thriving. Like
I think the difference there though is with Giannis, he's most likely MVP this year. MVP last year.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a guy who's won back-to-back MVPs in the regular season, and in both of those playoffs where he's the guy, you're talking about early eliminations.
Yeah.
I think with Siakam, last year no one really expected him to be this good.
Yeah.
Wins a championship as the second option on a team. And then this year he's an all-star during the regular season. He's expected to be the first option, but this is really the first instance in Siakam's career where he's disappointed. And so I think that it's fair to label him as being disappointing in these playoffs, but it's way too early. People online were comparing him to DeRozan and, choking in the playoffs, and people were comparing, him to like the way Paul George was playing, early on, and talking about trading him away.
Yeah.
I think that we still need to let Siakam have a full regular season under his belt next year and another playoff trip under his belt next year. If this starts to become an issue, if the Raptors can't get over that hump anymore with Siakam, and because how many chances did Lowry and DeRozan get? Like they had
years.
They had a couple of years, and granted, you can argue that was still unfair of them because they had to get by LeBron, and no one has gotten by LeBron. This is the first time the Raptors have been eliminated by a non-LeBron James team since that sweep against the Wizards, which seems like a decade ago.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that, like, honestly, I was a big defendant of DeMar DeRozan getting traded. Obviously, it works out. Kawhi Leonard leads us to the chip, and people aren't really going to be talking about that. But I would open up the question. I think if we have DeMar DeRozan on this team, do we get past the Celtics?
No.
Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. But the important thing is now is like I think you have to treat this the same way you treated Lowry and DeRozan, where it's going to be Siakam and Van Vliet, I guess, as like the two guys, so to speak, with Anunoby as like a good third option. If this core can get past that hump in the future, because we'll probably see the Celtics again at some point in the playoffs next year. They're not going anywhere. So if this becomes a routine problem, then you start to look at making changes. Then you start to really criticize Siakam because he showed up last year in the finals, right? So I think just because he has an off series, I think it's unfair to start throwing him under the bus in the way that they've been doing it. And I think, Jacob, you bringing up Matthews and Marner, the one thing I hope doesn't happen, especially now that the Raptors have gotten a lot more mainstream Toronto media coverage, is that they don't bury him the same way that Leafs players have been buried in the past. You don't want to make him a
scapegoat.
Jake Gardner scapegoat level player because that's so unfair on him, and that's going to make it so much harder for him to rebound from this. And so I think when Lowry said, listen to the news, listen to all of that, I think that might not be the best advice because Lowry was doing that, 6-7 years ago where the Raptors, frankly, weren't big in Toronto. Like, yeah, they had a fan base, but the Raptors where they are now versus where they were 7 years ago when we were getting swept by the
Cavs.
No,
Wizards.
The Wizards, and we lost in Brooklyn. Like, that was the beginning of this surgence of popularity where, 6 years ago, the criticism wasn't nearly as loud as it was yesterday with Siakam. And that's my only concern with listening to criticism because the Toronto media has a reputation of burying really good players.
Yeah, I agree.
Like they did it with Phil Kessel.
I think one of the only reasons he's getting criticized so much is because the Leafs are gone, so this is the last Toronto team you have in the in the postseason.
Yeah, they have that reputation of being winners, right?
And it was so long without any sports that everyone is watching you now. Like everyone is watching these series, whether you watched it before in the season or not, whether you watched highlights. Like how many people do you think actually watch Heat versus like Nuggets in the season? Like no one. But now that there's nothing else going on, and this is like the first time, the postseason is back since 4 or 5 months, I think it's just that much more added pressure, and I think he just broke under pressure. I think that's just how it went.
Dre, any last words on the topic?
Yeah, I think especially Masai Ujiri's gonna have a lot to think about because there's a lot of directions this team could go next year, and I hate to say it, but Lowry's at the top of his value. I feel like next 2-3 years, this is the highest value Larry's gonna have, and I think it's gonna be tough because if you're Masai looking at this roster, like, do you look at this core that you have right now and think this is a contending team for the next 2-3 years? And I don't know because we obviously know that the rumors are down the future that the Raptors want to get Giannis, obviously,
and that would change everything.
That would change a lot of things.
So I feel like he has to start. Like the Clippers did last year, where the Clippers were not a team that everybody thought was going to win the championship. Everybody knew playing the Clippers was tough. Like you don't go last year's Clippers. You don't go into like that. You don't go into a game against the Clippers and expect it's going to be an easy win. Every single night the Clippers battle. I feel like the Raptors have to make an environment like that. Like they've already had that this year. And I think if you want to sign Giannis and get assets, you have to make tough decisions because Lowry and all these guys are getting older, especially Marc Gasol. Like these guys might have to get value for them.
Yeah, I don't see Marc Gasol playing much longer, but I think that's a good point. And I mean, I think the Raptors fans trust Masai 100%. But absolutely, he's got some decisions to make. And just you bring up the Clippers, I think that's a perfect transition into just briefly talking about the rest of the NBA. So we know that it's Celtics and Heat in the East. We know that the Lakers are waiting in the West. Clippers have a 3-2 lead over the Nuggets. Anyone believe that the Clippers will choke that, or do we think the Clippers are...
They gave up a 16-point lead. That was not a great game to watch, but Kawhi Leonard does... You saw his interview, how dejected he was?
Yeah.
He does not like feeling like that. He's like LeBron when he loses. He gets really pissed because he's one of the best players in the world. Clippers are winning that next game. Game 6 is going to go to Clippers. It'll be a battle of LA in the West. That's going to be a bloodbath.
That's what it seems like.
I feel like Denver is not getting as much respect as they should because both series have been down 3-1. They've been completely counted out, and I think after Michael Porter Jr.'s comments when he's talking about we got to get more people involved in the offense, I feel like...
And then he buried a clutch 3 in the quarter.
So it's like 112 to 110, buries a clutch 3, then gets the block at the other end on Zubac, and that's unbelievable play. And I think the Nuggets can push this to 7, but I don't see them winning the series at all. I think Kawhi is not blowing a 3-1 lead. Kawhi's a robot. Kawhi is not programmed to blow 3-1 leads. That's how Kawhi works.
There you go. So then going on with that, just to wrap up basketball talk, conference finals predictions, if we're all assuming it's going to be Lakers-Clippers. Yeah. But first we'll talk about Celtics-Heat. I mean, I don't want to disrespect the Heat because Jimmy Butler is a monster. Like, I love his attitude. I love the way he's playing. You talk about he didn't want his family in the bubble because he said, this isn't a vacation. This is a work trip for me. Don't come. Like, it's a business trip. Don't come to the bubble. And I love that about him. I think you look at Bam and Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero. Like, they have some talent there. They play really good defense. My point is the Raptors played really good defense, and it wasn't enough. They had to show up on the offensive end. Now, I don't think that Butler's going to put up Siakam numbers like Butler will play. Yeah. I just think that this Celtics team is too good. So I think the Celtics win this series, and I don't think it's particularly close. I think the Heat maybe get a game or two, but I'll take Celtics in 6.
I disagree. I think the Heat are complete underdogs. From the start of the season, everybody thought Heat were going to be 6, 7 seed when they added Jimmy Butler, but I think this Heat team is Pat Riley did a great job. This is a perfectly constructed team. And this team is built to add another star to it. I don't know who that's going to be, whether it's Giannis or somebody else via trade, but Jimmy Butler, surrounded by these shooters and the resurgence of Bam Adebayo, like, this team is going to be tough to play because they bring it on the defensive end. They do not let you score easy points at every possession. Jimmy Butler is an animal in the playoffs. He's a beast. He'll do whatever it takes to win. And I feel like all these shooters, like, I was going into this thinking, they're not going to be the Bucks because these guys, like, none. These guys like Tyler Hero, these guys like Robinson, right? They're young guys who don't understand playoff basketball. But I was completely wrong about that. I think that would be the last time I underestimate the Heat, and I completely see them making the finals just because they bring it at both ends of the floor at a high level. And I think as much as the Celtics are, I think Eric Spoelstra is an amazing coach, and he's going to find the way to shut that down. So I take the Heat winning the series, but I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to be 7, and I think Jimmy Butler comes out and plays an amazing Game 7 for them.
All right,
I'm with
Jacob,
Dre.
you have the deciding factor.
I'm with Dre. I think the Heat are going to not dominate this series, but I think it's going to be very lopsided. I say half, more than half, like 4 games or something, goes to overtime. I think it's going to be very high-scoring games. I think Butler's going to put up so many points. He's going to have the career of a lifetime. And I think they come out in 7. I agree. I think Butler's just, Butler and the team he's got around him it's not maybe as experienced as the Boston Celtics, but I agree. I think they're a dark horse team. I think everyone took them for granted against the Bucks. I think everyone's going to take them for granted against the Celtics, and I think they're going to come out and shut everyone up.
All right, there you go. So you have 2 picks for Heat in 7, 1 pick for Celtics in 6, and we'll go reverse order. So we'll start with Jacob for Battle of LA in the West. Unless you want to go out bold and say Nuggets.
No, I'm going to stick with the Clippers. I don't think Kawhi, like you said, he's a robot. That man does not smile unless he wins. I think. Oh, that's a tough. I think it's going to be LeBron. I think it's going to be LeBron coming out on top. I think he's always been the best player for the past 5 years. I think Kawhi's put up definitely a great argument about it. But I think when you have a duo like LeBron and AD, and then you got Kuzma's playing out of his mind right now, and then they're blowing the Rockets out by like 30 points in a game that the Rockets should have been playing like the opposite. I think the Lakers are just so overpowered. It's just too much for I think Kawhi won't be able to carry. Like Lou Williams, I haven't been watching too much. I don't know how he's been doing. Dre, is he doing okay? Lou Williams?
Yeah, Lou Williams is going to be Lou Williams. Could go off the bench, score points for you.
Yeah, they got a good duo over there. They got, is Chris Paul George? Paul George, right?
Paul George.
Yeah, I keep mixing them up. So Paul George and Kawhi is their obvious duo, and then you got Lou Williams who can step up on Kuzma. But I think LeBron is just going to go absolute LeBron mode. Like, he goes down, 1-0 against Houston? They win 4 in a row.
Yeah.
It's
1-0 against Portland in the first round, win 4
in a row. It just fuels him. A loss fuels LeBron, and I think, obviously he's, in my opinion, the greatest player right now, arguably the greatest player of all time. They're winning that series. I think that goes only to 6 games. I think LeBron just absolutely dominates the Clippers.
Dre, your thoughts?
No, this is really tough because I feel like we obviously know what LeBron and Kawhi are gonna bring. They're gonna bring their A game.
Well, we also know what Kawhi's gonna bring.
Yeah. Kawhi and LeBron are going to bring everything they got, 100% effort every single game. I think the X factor is going to come down to Anthony Davis and Paul George.
I agree.
And I think that everything that I believe a championship should be points to the Clippers winning the series. But something in me, like the Lakers haven't really played amazing basketball in the bubble yet. Like they've always had guys like Danny Green, who he's supposed to hit every opening shot. He's been struggling. I feel like.
He's playing like Danny Green on the Raptors, where he's supposed to hit threes and he just wasn't hitting threes.
I feel like the Lakers have not played their potential yet, and they're still killing these teams. Where the Clippers have had struggles in round 1. Obviously, I feel like the Mavericks were like a very good 7 seed to play against, especially if Porzingis is healthy. I don't know how that series goes.
Yeah, we've talked about the Mavs being like the best team, arguably like team wise in the next few years. So.
Yeah, they have an outstanding future, but I feel like the Lakers take this, but I think it's going to be extremely close. I could see LeBron and the Lakers going down 2-0 and then just completely coming back. Just because this Clippers team is so dominant and they have so much depth and so much shooting. But when LeBron doesn't, especially those finals, I think it was 2016 where they're down 3-1.
Yeah.
They're down 3-1 to Golden State. And that looks completely lopsided. But LeBron doesn't like losing, and Anthony Davis is an outstanding offensive weapon, especially at the defensive end. I don't see how the Clippers stop AD. You put Montrezl Harrell on him; he's too small. I don't think Zubac. I think Zubac is a nice young piece, but I don't think he's the Anthony Davis stopper. And if you're putting Kawhi on LeBron, then Paul George is not guarding Anthony Davis. I think he ultimately averages the most points in the series. Anthony Davis. I think he really helps the Lakers win this. I think it goes 7. Lakers in 7. That's my pick.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting calls that need to be made in this series, and I think that. Initially, I was leaning heavily with the Lakers, especially the way Paul George was playing. but Paul George seems to have found his game. He's been playing a lot better against Denver, and I think that's going to be big for the Clippers because if they want to win, Paul George needs to deliver on both sides of the floor.
Well, that was the whole deal for Kawhi going to LA.
Exactly.
He wants Paul George.
I think that when you look at how they've gotten here so far, I mean, we're talking about a Clippers team that still isn't through to the Western Conference Finals, so they could lose 2 games, and it could be we could be talking about Lakers and Denver, right? So we're already giving the Clippers credit that they're going to close out the second round series. Now, the Lakers, when they went up against the Trailblazers, there were a lot of people saying that Portland would upset them, especially when they won Game 1.
Yeah. And
then we get into a situation where we're looking at 4 straight wins. It's an absolute dominant. I'm just checking the score because they're playing right now. It's 47-45 Clippers in the middle of the second quarter.
So it's fairly
close. At this point of recording, midway through Game 6, we still don't know which way that's going. I completely agree with you, Dre, in the sense that I think Anthony Davis is the X factor. Because the whole point of the Clippers is they're built on defense.
Yeah.
Because you talk about the number of players that can switch and defend. Kawhi, Paul George, Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell. Those are all elite level defenders. But as you mentioned, Dre, none of those guys really match up well against Anthony Davis because at some point size matters more than your ability to play defense. So I completely agree with you. I don't, as much as the Clippers are built defensively, they're not built defensively to defend Anthony Davis because they don't have that big defensive big, you know? And so I think that's going to be a huge deal. And I think that on top of that, as well as you are defensively, I don't think you can stop LeBron. You can only slow him down.
That doesn't happen. You don't
right? And so I think that factoring in only being able to slow down LeBron and factoring in the fact that it's going to be a nightmare to try to defend Anthony Davis in the paint. I mean, I was Clippers at the beginning of the year. I was Clippers at the beginning of the playoffs. I was Clippers going in. But they struggled against Luka on his own.
Yeah, Luka carried that team.
And now they're struggling against, the Nuggets are a good team and they deserve respect. But, Murray and Jokic are not LeBron and AD, right? So I'm not disrespecting the Nuggets. Like, I think the Nuggets have played very well. But they're not the Lakers duo level. And I think if the Clippers are struggling against just Luka and the Clippers are struggling against the Nuggets,
duo and Nuggets,
I don't see how they can not struggle against the Lakers. So I'm going to say Lakers in 6.
Yeah. And just add a couple more points. I think it's very valid to say that the Clippers are coming off a lot of fatigue, especially in these series. Especially if the Nuggets push it to 7. I know they're down by 2.5.
Did the Mavericks take it to 7?
Yeah, and Mavericks took it to 6, and then the Nuggets
6.
are in Game 6 right now. But LeBron and the Lakers have been
5-5.
pretty comfortable
They've
series.
played 10 games.
Yeah,
this is the 12th game for the Clippers already.
Yeah, and I feel like that's going to factor into it. But I feel like also Rondo is a very underrated piece because when he got injured before the bubble happened, I was like, damn, because their backup guards are no disrespect to the GOAT Caruso, but I don't think I don't think Caruso is that like playoff X factor. But Rondo is a very underrated piece. Like playoff Rondo is a thing, and you can see like analysts talking about it, especially like guys like Kendrick Perkins. We're talking about Rajon Rondo and how clutch he is in these playoffs. And the when he came back against Houston, he's a good defender too. He's great with the ball. He makes the right decision almost every single time. And I feel like the Clippers are built with wing defenders, and they don't have that, like, especially.
It's a bad matchup against the Lakers.
It's a bad matchup.
Is. The Lakers kind of beat them they trump them in every single position.
Yeah. And I don't know why I'm thinking about this right now. Like the Bulls when they had Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman, right? Like Rodman was such a good defender in the paint, and that's why that team was so successful. And I feel like the Clippers have a Jordan and Pippen, right? I feel like
they just don't have that Rodman.
They don't have that Rodman to stop AD. I feel like LeBron, you can't compare him to anybody. LeBron, he's not as good as Jordan, but he's a completely different player than Jordan. I think he impacts the game in so many different ways, but I just don't see the Clippers winning that series because that Lakers team can throw so much things at you, and they can run so much different lineups. Like they can run AD at the 5, and then what happens when you like who's going to guard AD at the 5, and then he's the biggest guy on that. He's going to be the biggest guy on the floor at all times.
And I think you kind of get a preview of that because the Houston Rockets play notoriously small.
Yeah.
And they had no answer for Anthony Davis.
No, and then LeBron's covered. Okay, give it to AD. AD's covered. Okay, give it to Kuzma. Kuzma's covered. Give it to Rondo.
Yeah.
Like they got a whole team.
Yeah. So there's a basketball talk for today. Always good to show some love to other sports, but we're first and foremost a hockey podcast, and the main reason why we have Dre out here, you would have thought he was a pure basketball guy based on his takes, but he's a hardcore Dallas Stars fan, and the main reason why we have him on today is because his team is one win away from a trip to the Stanley Cup Finals. As we pan over to Hockey Talk, and we're just going to give Dre the floor to talk about the Dallas Stars season, the playoffs, where they're at right now, and how you're feeling going into a potential closeout game tomorrow night against Vegas.
This team is so terrible to watch, but so satisfying to cheer for at the same time. This team is, when you look at all the stats, like this Vegas series, Vegas averages more goals, like they average more shots on that. They everything counts to Vegas, but the Dallas Stars game plan, and when they fired Montgomery at the beginning of the year, I was very pissed off to say the least, because I thought he was an amazing coach, and obviously it was personal reasons, had nothing to do with hockey, which even Tyler Seguin said. Tyler Seguin said he wanted Montgomery to be the coach for the rest of his Dallas Stars career. And I feel like that's well said, because Montgomery was an amazing coach, and Rick Bowness coming in, I thought, who's this old dude that used to coach the Rangers, like on the bench? And this guy has got the boys playing hard and playing outstanding hockey. Like every game is a one-goal game, and it's so thrilling to watch and nerve-wracking. But when the team comes out with success, it's amazing. This whole season has been disappointing and pretty, like, in the regular season especially, because there was times where we were out of the playoff race, and then we're in the wild card, and then we got into a winning streak. We're like third in the division, and then the bubble came in, and we're the third seed in the West for the bubble. And I just want to talk about the series for a little bit. That Calgary series, obviously, like, I didn't expect Calgary to win. I knew Calgary's a good team, and they got guys like Giordano and Monahan and Gaudreau and Kachuk, but Gaudreau never really shows up in the playoffs, and I didn't really expect an upset to happen there over Dallas. But that Colorado series, that was when I thought this team was going to meet their kryptonite. Colorado, like, credit, you got to say, they had a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
Colorado lost Landeskog, Grubauer, Francouz got hurt eventually.
But everyone picked them to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, like there's a lot, like that
you don't
team.
Expect injuries.
That team's extremely deep, nonetheless. Like they get all those injuries, and you still and they still play elite level hockey. So it's super hard to like play against Colorado every night. And when Dallas goes up 3-1, I'm like, oh, this is great. We got veterans, and these veterans are not going to blow a 3-1 lead. There's no way these vets who are chasing the Stanley Cup. You got Ben, you got Radulov, Pavelski, they're not going to blow a 3-1 lead. They want this. Game 6 hits, and then they get killed. They were down 5-0 in the first period. It's unbelievable.
That was fun to watch.
Then it's Game 7, and the unsung hero, the Finnish Wayne Gretzky, Joel Kiviranta. This guy is a stud. This guy, the king of interviews, the king of hockey. This guy, I remember I was at home, and I got a notification on my phone. This is 2 years. This is the last year in last season. They signed Joel Kiviranta to a 2-year entry-level deal. He's a rookie. I started searching him up. He's a 24-year-old rookie, Joel Kiviranta. I'm like, what's this guy going to do? And that's the story of hockey, where it's always these guys.
The unsung heroes.
It's never the guys, like, maybe in Pittsburgh, it's Sidney Crosby. That's Sidney Crosby. When it comes to, like, other teams like Dallas, it's never going to be about Jimmy Benn and about Seguin.
But even with Pittsburgh, when they won their back-to-back cups, there were moments where, you look at the Benito goal in overtime against Washington. You look at Connor Sheary scoring in overtime against San Jose in the finals. So even though you have huge pieces on your team, you need those guys to step up.
It comes down to those guys.
Yeah.
And, like, this Stars team is extremely deep, and I don't see them blowing the same 3-1 lead to Vegas just because I feel like these guys know that they got a scare from Colorado when they went up 3-1. I don't think they're going to get comfortable like they did last year's, and I think to be honest, Dallas can make it to the finals, but I don't know who's going to win between Tampa and the Islanders, but Tampa is the most talented team in the NHL, and they finally got over that hump, and I think it's only going downhill now. Like, they're just going to run through everybody.
Yeah. Who would you rather play? You'd rather play the Islanders?
I'd rather play the Islanders, but even the Islanders are extremely hardworking.
With their system,
team. Yeah, they're extremely well coached, extremely hardworking, and this Tampa Bay team as well. They're just like they're missing Stamkos. You got to think about that. They're missing their captain Stamkos, and then I thought like these guys like they lost Stroman last year to the Panthers. I thought that was very underrated because he's like a very good veteran top 4 presence for that team.
Yeah.
And then you got guys like Sergachev step up in the playoffs, and Ryan McDonough. When they traded for him, I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago from the Rangers.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a stud, and then I'm like, McDonough sucks right now. He's not that good, and now he's coming back. I think he's finally being comfortable with this team and finding his role. And I feel like that would be a terrible matchup for Dallas, to be honest, in the playoffs, if they make it to the finals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jacob, your thoughts on everything in the East, West, wherever you want to go with it.
Well, Tampa, just Tampa. Like, what was the first game? 9-2 or something? 8-2.
8-2, yeah.
Ridiculous.
8-2 in an NHL professional hockey game.
Conference finals.
Yeah,
four
conference
teams
finals.
left.
And that's hard to do against the Islanders.
That's hard to do in any hockey game.
Yeah, but Islanders especially, they hang their hat on the defensive end. They're extremely hard working.
In that one game, so Tampa scored 8 goals in game 1. That was more goals than Florida scored the entire series against them.
That's
and
extreme.
I believe more goals than, not Washington, but the other team that they played. After Florida, they beat Washington, then they beat... Oh, wow, I'm blanking on that.
Completely blanking.
Wow.
But that just shows you how much they neutralize the other teams.
Oh, they played Washington.
Yeah,
Right?
and then
It was
after
qualifier,
they beat Florida.
Yes.
Then they beat Washington in the first round.
And
then who
then-
they beat in the second round?
That second round matchup.
You see, they were so good defensively that they absolutely neutralized.
But at the same time, like, when you think of Islanders hockey, like, I don't think a lot of people tune into that series, other than Islanders fans, because
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, that's
Philly,
who it was.
classics,
yeah, and they think Philly scored fewer than 8 goals in that series.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So Tampa's absolutely nuts.
So, anyways, my point is, like, with that is what Tampa did was so impressive. Anyways, back to what you were saying, Jacob.
I think Dallas makes it to the final. Honestly, if Dallas and the Islanders play in the final, no offense, but that would be one of the most boring finals I've ever seen in recent history.
Not entertaining.
I would love to see Tampa to win this year, not because I like Tampa, because I absolutely hate Tampa. They beat Boston. I don't really like the Islanders that much. They kind of are jerks to John Tavares when he left for personal reasons. But Stamkos needs that cup.
Yeah.
Honestly, and so does Vasilevsky and Kucherov. All these guys, these guys are definitely not necessarily underrated in the sense that they're excellent players, but the fact that they haven't won yet is shocking to everyone. If they don't win this year, they'll be known as the chokers for the rest of their lives. Arguably choked away that series in 2017 to Pittsburgh. 2017 or was it 2016?
2016.
To Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Up 3-2, and they lost it. So
Up
they have a
3-2 and then scored like 1 goal in the next 2 games.
it was awful. They were, they have this persona of, they're not going to make it, they're not going to make it. So if they make it this year, I'm rooting for them. Dallas is going to beat Vegas tomorrow. Vegas just has nothing going for them.
Especially Mark's own injury, that's big.
That was honestly, I think that's a huge blow to morale as well, and I think that definitely goes to show, only scoring less than 3 goals in every game they played so far. It's kind of awful to watch. I used to be a Vegas fan, and then I kind of got off that little bandwagon that everyone had going, and I'm just kind of looking at all the problems now. Robin Leonard's kind of playing out of his mind, and his team's just not doing anything for him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Fleury fan, so
Yeah.
I mean, I want Vegas to do well when Fleury's in the net, but Fleury's not even in the net. And I feel like we could spend a whole hour just talking about DeBoer's goaltending choices in the playoffs.
Well, so far they've been pretty well. Leonard has been pretty lights out.
They've been winning, so I mean, you can't really knock it.
Yeah.
But no, I think my thoughts on the Tampa Bay Lightning are very well known on this podcast, and even if you know me outside this podcast, I do not trust the Tampa Bay Lightning because I would you pick them every year, and they just never show you what you expect from them.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much at the point where they need to show me. And it was the same thing with Washington. Every year, I just assumed Washington would lose in the second round. And then they won the cup, and you know what? Fair play to Washington, they got it done. Tampa Bay could be that team this year, where they finally get over that hump and they get there.
I'd love
And
to see
they
them
have a
win.
golden opportunity because, no disrespect to the New York Islanders, but we've talked about it on this podcast. Talent-wise, Tampa blows them out of the talent-wise, Tampa blows every team out of the water.
Well, it's just because of the system. That's all.
Exactly,
It is.
and the Islanders are there because of the system that they play. And I think that the thing about Tampa Bay is if they play up to their potential, they can beat the Islanders 8-2. And they can beat the Islanders every single game.
They
But
smack them.
they are not playing up. I think consistency-wise is they don't show enough consistency. And they've shown enough consistency this year to get the series wrapped up.
Yeah.
But I still don't know if they have enough consistency to win a Stanley Cup. And I say that with them being 6 wins away.
Yeah.
But I still think that in order for me to fully trust Tampa, they're going to have to win the Cup. And I'm going to continue betting against them until they do it. And I think tomorrow's a huge game. If the Islanders tie up this series 2-2...
Wait, don't they play tonight?
Or, sorry,
Yeah,
they play
they
today.
play
Sorry,
tonight.
they play this afternoon. As of recording, they play in about half an hour. And so if the Islanders tie up that series, I think
That's a whole nother series.
Yeah.
I think you stop talking about Tampa Bay in the finals and you start talking about can Tampa Bay close out this series.
Yeah.
And I think with Dallas, they almost look like, I'm not going to say a team of destiny, but I called it on the last episode. I said whoever wins the Colorado-Dallas series, I
Who's
think
gonna
wins
win
the
the
Stanley
cup?
Cup.
Yeah.
And I'm sticking to that. I think that Dallas will make the finals, and I think that if it's Tampa or the Islanders, they're going to push that team very far.
No, I have to come to the defense of Tampa Bay because I feel like even if they end up losing this series to the Islanders, and I think maybe if they lose the series in 7 to the Islanders, I don't think you can call them chokers because it's so hard, especially in hockey, when you lose your captain for the whole playoffs.
I agree.
It's so hard to rebound from that.
But it's not just this year. It's every
in
single
general.
year they've
But I
played.
feel like this is the year where because they people forget they destroyed Boston. Like Boston's such a tough team to play.
I was
And,
surprised with how bad Boston played.
Granted, Boston lost to Garask, and Halak's not the same goalie to Garask is, but that team dismantled Boston, and I feel like a team like this, when they go into the conference finals, they're in the conference finals right now. If they make the Stanley Cup Finals and lose, I think this is a great stepping stone for Tampa in the right direction. And I don't think it's necessarily a thing like Washington where they win it all this year and then start disappearing in the playoffs again, like Washington has the past couple of years. But I feel like Tampa Bay finally has started to reach a level where, now we're in this to win it. Now we're contenders. Like how the Raptors always got bounced second round, disappointed by LeBron when they're top 2, top 3 seeds in the East. Just to compare it to them, I feel like this is finally the year where they go over the hump, and I feel like it's only gonna get better for them, especially when they lose their captain. And I have to credit the Islanders. People always discount them, and I obviously we're all basically assuming Tampa might make it, but I think this Islanders team is a very tough matchup for them, especially because Tampa is such a good offensively constructed team, and they got so much talent at the defensive end too.
Tampa blew them away in Game 1, but Game 2, winner with 8 seconds left. In Game 3, they lose a 1-goal game.
I was surprised Islanders also came out and won Game 3 after that because I feel like that's such a big wound to take when you play your heart out after that 8-2 loss
and that speaks to their character. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of teams would have folded down 2-0.
Absolutely.
But the one thing I will say about Tampa is, especially with the salary cap not going up and the amount of talent that they have on that team,
they gotta pay them.
And so I think that you're talking about this was a Tampa Bay team that probably started their window back in 2014, 2015. They make a Stanley Cup Finals, they lose. They get knocked out to the eventual champions Pittsburgh the next year.
Mm-hmm.
Then they lose early. Then they lose early again.
Yeah.
Then they get swept as the President's Trophy winners. And so I agree with you if they were to make the finals and lose or make the conference or lose this conference finals series. It's not as bad as they've performed given the last 3 years. But you're looking now at a 6-year period where you're a championship caliber team and you have no championships to count for. And so ultimately, obviously they didn't choke as bad as maybe the San Jose Sharks have, but I'd argue that they were way more talented than San Jose ever was.
Yeah.
And you measure success on championships, not how close you got, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no one will remember, Vasilevsky, the goalie who almost got the championship 7 times. You'll look at it as Marc-Andre Fleury, the guy who got it 3 times.
Yeah, even though, he was a backup for, you can argue, 1.5 of those. It doesn't matter because, he was a very important part of that team and he has those rings to count for.
Cups, yeah.
Exactly.
I'm actually going to disagree with you on saying that you can't call them chokers. When you, like Labi said, when you have a championship caliber team with your captain, with a healthy team, and you're not winning the championship year after year, 2017 they didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So my argument is how you have this team. That's like Golden State with the dynasty they made, but never winning any of those. They're chokers.
I think OKC is a solid.
OKC,
right?
With KD and was it Paul George or CP3?
KD, Westbrook, and
Harden. They had the guys. That's a championship team right there. And those guys were younger, healthier, more in shape, and they didn't win anything. They're chokers. So why is Tampa not chokers?
So I feel like this is different because it's like you talk about OKC, but imagine OKC and when they had Kevin Durant and all those guys. Imagine OKC and Actually, I think Russell Westbrook, for example. OKC and Russell Westbrook goes down, and he's out for the rest of the playoffs.
That's
and then,
fair.
And then
That's
that
fair.
team goes to the conference finals. I think you have to credit that team and the amount of heart they have
Oh no,
to do that.
I'm
And
not
I feel like,
discrediting them, but
I-
I'm
yeah,
saying
yeah.
they haven't won anything in the past 7 years.
Yeah.
When they have a team, they should be winning 5 of those.
No, I think you can see both sides. You give them credit for getting this far with their captain injured, but at
Yeah.
the same time, the expectation was and always will be, regardless of injuries, the expectation is
Yeah,
going to
like,
be for this team to win
Every team
championship.
is plagued by injuries. Like, you can argue the Avalanche lost on injuries, but they still took that to 7 games.
Yeah.
Like, you can argue all these injuries affected everyone, and you can blame it on injuries. Eric Johnson got hurt. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't play adapting according to your injuries. Then, and if you don't do that year after year after year after year, then what? Like, let's see. You can argue that Montreal would have won the cup in 2014 when Price didn't get hurt. If Price didn't get hurt against Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
New York when Chris Kreider went into him.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't. You gotta adapt. You gotta adapt and overcome. And if you can't overcome injuries and you can't win with a team that should be winning, then you choke.
I just feel like it's different this year because like all the past years with Tampa Bay, it feels like when you played Tampa Bay in the playoffs, you weren't really that scared because you knew Tampa Bay's playoff history. And I feel like this year is different because now you're scared
You're
to play
scared.
Tampa.
Yeah.
And this is a different Tampa Bay team because I feel like now they finally have heart that they had. Like they've been missing that like will to win. The past 7 years, I feel like it's different because on paper, you can build a team as a GM and say this is a contender. But if they go out and don't play like that, that's different. And when you obviously their coach has done a great job this season especially.
John Cooper has absolutely changed the way Tampa's kind of played. In this
Like
sense.
they changed their play style to like we're just gonna run the scoreboard on these guys, and they started playing like hardworking hockey now. And I feel like now this is the year where I'm not gonna say they're gonna win it all, but I feel like this is a year that it's different to their past.
Well, if you look at
I agree.
if you look at game 1 of this season of this series against guys compared to the whole series against Columbus last year, Kucherov already had 5 points in the first game of this series in one game when he didn't even have that many points like last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes to show that the players that are being paid and are expecting this being stepped up are stepping up.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think there's big stories coming forward. Obviously, Dallas a big chance to close out that series, and it'll be interesting to see how Tampa goes on with that in the conference finals. Switching away from playoffs and into the start of new seasons, we're going to bring it into, for the first time on this podcast, the NFL. So the opening kickoff in the NFL was Thursday night. We saw the defending champs Mahomes defeat the Houston Texans and
Kill the Texans.
demolish the Texans. Sorry if you hear
So
some noise in the background.
Can't control the world outside.
Yeah. But as we move on to week 1 in the NFL, we're just going to quickly run through some quick predictions here. And I think the first thing to do is just go through division by division and very quickly name who you think is going to top the division. We'll start with the NFC East. So we have Dallas, New York Giants, Philadelphia, and the Washington Football Team. Best name in sports, Washington Football Team. Jacob, who takes that division?
I hate Dallas, but they're going to take it. That's a weak division. That's an easy. Dallas can go 6. Dallas can go 7.
Dallas can go 8-8 and win the division.
Yeah, they can go 7-9 to win the division.
Yeah.
Like, it's not bad.
Yeah,
Washington's not doing anything this year.
I agree with you. I say Dallas.
Yeah.
Dallas wins.
I think Dallas. I think like the Eagles doesn't have a case to make it, but I just think Dallas is like. I think Dallas is a slightly better team. I think they win this division by maybe like they win 1, maybe 2 more games than the Eagles, but I definitely think they win.
I think it'll
one.
be close with the
Yeah,
Eagles.
it'll be
But,
close.
I mean, Danny Dimes is going to get 50 touchdowns. Giants are going 16-0. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. NFC North: Chicago, Detroit, Green Bay, and Minnesota.
This is easy for me. I think Green Bay wins this by far. I think Aaron Rodgers is the most underrated quarterback in the league. I feel like he had that. He's had some bad injuries.
I think people have slept on him.
Yeah, but
recently.
I feel like over this whole break, after he gets healthier, I feel like he's extremely well. I think when people talk about the best quarterbacks in the league right now, like I don't think people disrespect him, but I think a lot of people leave him out of that conversation.
Yeah.
And they bring in more popular names like Mahomes and Tom Brady. Even though I don't think Tom Brady's still there. I think he's an elite quarterback. I don't think he's still top 5, but
we'll get into that with the
I think Green Bay wins this division. I don't really think it's that close.
I agree with you. I'm thinking that Green Bay wins the division. I think that Minnesota has always been there, but not quite there.
Yeah.
I think they might take a step back. And honestly, I'm going to go – I think a bold prediction for me is I think Detroit's going to be a lot better than people think they're going to be. Now, when I say that, I mean they'll probably win like 7 games instead of like 4. So I don't think they're going to be like in the discussion. But I think Green Bay will win the division, and I think that Minnesota might slip up and like lose a game to Detroit, and that might be the difference.
I
Jacob.
agree. I think Green Bay is going to win only because Minnesota got rid of a few important key pieces over. It's losing their best wide receiver in Stephon Diggs.
Stephon Diggs to Buffalo.
No sense to me.
So that didn't make any sense to me, and I just think Minnesota is on the downfall now. I don't think there's much more to be said. Was it Cousins is the quarterback?
Yeah,
there?
and that's the other thing. I think, as Dre mentions, Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be solid.
Yeah.
I think Kirk Cousins, there are still some question marks about how consistent.
So I think
he can
Green
be.
Bay wins that, no question. Though.
NFC South, and this one might be one of the more interesting picks because on one hand you have Atlanta and Carolina, but then you also have the New Orleans Saints and the new look Tampa Bay Buccaneers that I think everyone is just assuming Brady and Gronk and everything with going on there. Jacob, I know you're a big Brady fan,
I'm a big Brady
but you
fan.
also do keep it honest.
I do like to keep it honest here. Carolina and Atlanta don't have a chance. They're not good. Carolina's a better chance than Atlanta. I don't think that's needed to be discussed anymore. I don't know. This new Tampa Bay team looks pretty deadly. I'm not gonna lie. Brady, obviously an aging Brady. Who knows? Maybe this will be his last few years. Gronk coming out of retirement. He's had a year to rest up. We'll argue, and then bringing in Fournette from the Jags.
I think that's an underrated move that people aren't thinking about.
I think that's definitely a big piece to this Tampa Bay coin. I don't think people are gonna give Fournette the credit he deserves because he was so kind of underused in a sense in Jacksonville because it's Jacksonville. No one likes Jacksonville. He's going to be more important than Gronkowski this season.
Yeah,
and I think it's because of age. I think it's because of talent. I think it's because of where he came from. He's got nothing to lose. He came from a team that was at the bottom of the league, and he's coming to a team that is arguably going to be one of the best teams, or expected to be one of the best teams this season. I think Tampa Bay takes this. I think they take it, and I think it's going to come to one game between the Saints, and it's going to come to one. It's going to be
between the two teams
for the Saints, and it's going to be that way. That game will
and
be
they
the
play
winning.
today, opening week 1.
So it's
25.
Yeah.
So
watching that.
So you know what? That game will definitely be. I think it's going to be what's the word for it? Like a preview of what this season will be like for either of the teams.
Yeah, Dre.
And I disagree. I think
Okay.
I think the Saints are going to win the division because I feel like this is Drew Brees' last year on his contract with New Orleans, and I feel like this is the season because they've had the past 3 postseasons for the Saints have been very.
They don't play Minnesota.
They've underperformed, I guess you could say, but they've also got very unlucky with some very questionable calls the past few years, and I feel like this is the year where Drew Brees I think Drew Brees is going to go off, and I think especially in his last year, where he still has a lot of offensive weapons, they got a solid defense. I feel like this Buccaneers team is very good, but I feel like they're also a little bit overrated, just because I feel like Tom Brady's very old, and it's not easy for a quarterback going from all this time in New England and then going to a team with a whole new offense around him. I feel like I don't think it's going to be as comfortable. I feel like it's going to be a different type of fit because it's not the way it's not going to be the same way Brady's been playing for his whole career. I feel like Gronkowski pickup is like, it's Gronkowski, so he's going to do Gronkowski things, but I don't think he's going to be the same player he was in New England. I think they already had weapons before Brady came. I think adding Fournette and Gronkowski make them slightly better, but not like a worlds ahead. And I feel like the Saints win this division just because they've been together for so long. And I feel like this is the year where Drew Brees really amps up the guys and say, this is our year, let's go for it. And I feel like the Saints take this division, but I think it's going to be really close. I think this game tonight could be really decisive. I feel like the lead in the division could come down to one game. And I feel like this game on opening night for both those teams could be very...
Do you know if it's in Tampa or New Orleans?
It's in New Orleans.
It's in New Orleans?
Yeah.
So that could... I mean, I don't know if they're allowing fans or not in this
They're
city.
not, but...
I know Tampa is.
Tampa wants to.
The Chiefs had a very interesting thing opening night. The Chiefs had fans in the arena.
We'll talk about that when we get to the Chiefs. Labi, your predictions.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Saints on this one as well. And I think the reason why is I think Brady will have a better season than he did last year because he has weapons that he can actually throw the ball to, unlike in New England.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're talking about... I mean, I guess Breeze is also like a 43-year-old quarterback. But I think offensively, the Saints match the Bucks. Like, you have a old veteran quarterback who knows how to get it done. You have an explosive running back. Like, Kamara's locked up to a contract now, so he's going to play.
Yeah.
You know, Michael Thomas matches up very well with Mike Evans, right? And Sanders matches up well with Chris Godwin. Like, Gronk is the X factor on tight end, but how much can a tight end really like tip the scales?
Well, what about Travis Kelce?
Chiefs, not Saints.
Doesn't matter. It's still a tight end.
Yeah, okay, but my point is,
I'm just trying to say that tight ends make a big difference.
They do make a big difference,
Yeah.
but I think that the difference of the tight ends being better in Tampa, if you look at the defensive side of the ball, the Saints' defense blows Tampa's defense out of the water.
Yeah, so it's going to be an offensive battle between those two.
And I think that makes a big difference, and I also agree to Dre's point, especially with them playing Week 1 in New Orleans. I don't see Tampa Bay having everything like planned out, especially with no preseason games. And so I think the Saints are going to start more confidently and keep going.
Fair enough.
So I think the Bucks make the playoffs, but I mean, I also don't see the Bucks. Like, I think the Bucks maybe go 9-7, like 10-6 tops.
I don't see them having like an incredible year either.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be an above average team. Absolutely, they're going to be a good
like
team.
if you were to tell me one of these teams in the division would go 13-3, I'd tell you it's the Saints and they're the only team that could do that. And then the final division in the NFC West. Pretty interesting teams here. You got Arizona, the LA Rams, the Super Bowl finalists in the San Francisco 49ers, and then you have Russell Wilson on the Seahawks. Just for me to open up this time, the Rams are not as bad as everyone says they are, but they're also not that great.
No,
right? They're also not that great. The San Francisco 49ers, I think, are the most interesting team here because I don't know if they can do what they did again last year, but they have talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seattle, never count out Russell Wilson. He's proven that. And you know what? I think, especially with 3 wildcard teams this year, I think the only thing stopping Arizona from making the playoffs is the fact that they're in a loaded division.
Yeah.
I think that the Cardinals are going to be a tough team to beat this year. With Kyler Murray's going to take a step forward. He has a weapon now in Nuke Hopkins. I mean, you have a much better defense around them as well. Mm-hmm. I think it's a big year for Arizona in terms of having to prove that they can compete. But in terms of a division, I think this is a toss-up between San Francisco and Seattle. Yeah. So I'm just going to go with who I trust more. Yeah. And so I trust Russell Wilson and Seattle more. I think both of these teams are easily making the playoffs. They can both win like 11, 12 games this year top. Yeah. But I'm taking the Seahawks.
I think it's going to be very close. I like the 49ers just for the reason, like, I don't trust Garoppolo that much. I think this team goes as far as Garoppolo goes, at least in the playoffs.
Yep.
Regular season-wise, it's a very talented team. They got a good defense. They got a lot of offensive weapons, too. And I feel like this Seattle team is just Russell Wilson. You're right, never count him out. He's like you never want to bet against Russell Wilson, but I don't feel like he has the same team around him that Garoppolo does.
Yeah.
And Garoppolo is not even close to the level of quarterback Wilson is. But I feel like just in the regular season, I think Garoppolo's not gonna have the pressure on him that he did in the playoffs, and I think he's gonna lead this team to the division title. But I don't think he's gonna do much. I think the Seahawks could go further than in the playoffs, but I don't see.
But we're talking about regular season predictions.
I don't see Seahawks winning the division.
That's fair. Jacob.
I'm with the 49ers on this one. I think they still off the anger of losing the Super Bowl last year, and I think Shanahan is the coach.
Yep.
I think he'll maybe smarten up with his play calls and maybe make a few more more common sense calls instead of a few things they did in the playoffs last year. I think he'll get over his choking ways. I think they're going to win this division.
All right, there you go. And so now switching over to the AFC, we'll start with the AFC East. I think this is probably maybe one of the easier decisions we'll have to make. Buffalo, Miami, New England, and New York. Buffalo.
Actually, Buffalo too. But I think New England's going to be better than people think they are, but I think Buffalo still wins the division.
Buffalo's going to... not Sam. It's Jake Allen. It's going to be ridiculous. With Stephon Diggs, too.
Yeah. You see, my bold prediction is I think the Patriots might be bottom of this division.
You think so?
Yeah.
Honestly, Cam Newton's not the guy he was years ago.
No, but I think Cam Newton's very motivated. I think the reason Patriots could be a top 2 seed in the division, maybe even the 2 seed, that might be a little high. I think they're going to be at least top 3. I see that because they got Belichick, who's just a chess master when it comes to coaching football. And then they also got Cam Newton. I feel like it's extremely motivated this year. And a healthy Cam Newton is a scary player.
I agree with you.
And he's not the same player he was, but I feel like this team can still make some noise in the division.
I think if Cam Newton gets injured,
it's over.
They don't win a game. And I think that they finish bottom in spite of Cam Newton playing incredibly. well because they don't have weapons offensively, and their normally elite defense is missing everyone because they're all opting out, right?
I'm going to agree with you. I think New England hits the bottom, and I think no weapons to throw to. Cam Newton's going to be doing a lot of running, and a lot of running means a lot of tackling. A lot of tackling is a wear on the body, and I think after his injuries in the recent history, he's just not going to be able to make the whole season if he keeps running. Like if his defense, like you said, is opting out, he's going to get sacked quite a bit this season.
Yeah.
I think New England gets sacked on bold prediction the most this season.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like the reason I picked the Patriots too. I know they don't have the offensive weapons, but I feel like that organization is notorious for finding players and developing them extremely well.
I agree. At this point,
they
could just figure it out.
At this point, this organization, when they knew they were going to lose Brady, they knew they had to compensate. And I think the front office is smarter than to just sign Cam Newton and say this is it. I think the organization is focusing a lot on development, and I feel like they know what they have to do to make some noise, and that involves developing players and finding these guys that nobody else knows about. I feel like offensive weapons, like, they're gonna find guys, and Cam Newton's gonna find guys, and obviously you can see like all over social media, like they've been working on team chemistry, and they're confident in Cam Newton. Cam Newton's confident in them. So I feel like that team chemistry and the belief in the change room is what could make them win a lot of games.
That's
a
big factor.
Morale
to think
can
about.
only take you so far.
Yeah, I know, but morale in the regular season is pretty important. In the playoffs, I don't think they're gonna make much noise.
It's important, but when you have no one to throw to, Cam Newton's gonna get sick and tired of having to do it all himself.
Yeah, I know, but Cam Newton, that's what I'm talking about. They might find these weapons that nobody's heard about, like all these. Like this guy might come in maybe week 2, week 3 after an injury happens, and he's outstanding.
That's what they did with Edelman. That's what they did with.
But again, that's a big risk you're taking. Like if you're expecting to go far, like I understand Belichick, like you said, is a chess master.
Yeah.
When you have no one to play with chess, how can you win?
Yeah.
Like, even if they're these up and coming, it takes time to develop these guys, and if they're not developed if the Patriots go 1-3 by the 4th week, if they don't start winning by the 5th week, they're not even going to make it close to the playoffs.
I will say the Patriots are currently up 14-3 on the Miami Dolphins right now.
Okay,
so
it's the Dolphins. Give them a break on this first game.
Fitzmagic isn't that great.
Fitzmagic. Maybe we'll see Tua a lot earlier than.
I'd love to see Tua.
So moving on to I think what is another one of the tough divisions to call in the AFC North, because you have the defending MVP Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens. You have Joe Burrow, and then you look Cincinnati Bengals. You have the Cleveland Will They Ever Figure It Out Browns.
Yeah.
And you have Big Ben back with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jacob, where is this one going?
Pittsburgh's at the bottom. I'd love Cleveland to win that, but I know they're not going to. The winner of this is Baltimore.
That's a big call, just saying Pittsburgh's at the bottom, right like that.
You know why? It's because Big Ben is coming off a super, super bad injury. Was it a shoulder injury?
Yeah. I understand that.
And how old is he? 40s?
38.
Yeah, he's up there, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not taking away. He won a Super Bowl for them.
It's absolutely valid to question Big Ben's performance coming into this season.
One of the only reasons I put Cleveland ahead of them, not because I'm a Cleveland Brown fan, which is as depressing as it is to say. 0-16, let's go.
Danny Dimes, New York Giants. We're winning 3 games this year.
But Baker Mayfield, I think this is the year he finally gets it together. He's got some great offensive weapons. He's got OBJ, which, granted, I honestly think people don't give enough credit for it just because, he hasn't been playing up to his potential. I think brand new year. Granted, they play someone extremely tough right off the bat. I think they play Baltimore or something, or someone.
The Cleveland Browns are losing 24-6 to Baltimore right now as we speak.
Yes! Great start. So, anyways, maybe, Baltimore's not a great... Obviously, Lamar Jackson's probably playing with Lamar Jackson. Who else is in that division? It's Baltimore,
Cleveland, Cincinnati.
Okay,
Pittsburgh.
Cincinnati. They come second in that division. I think Joe Burrow... And I think Joe Burrow comes out gunning for the postseason. I think Joe Burrow, coming out of his greatest year in LSU... has this hunger that no quarterback right now I think has the hunger that Joe Burrow does. This is the best quarterback we've seen in a long time drafted. You can argue since I can't even think back. Mahomes, yeah. Obviously,
3 years ago.
He's not even Mahomes level. Don't get me wrong there. Mahomes came out and absolutely dominated. It took a few years. But I think, obviously, it's going to take a growing pains, right? But I think Big Ben's too old. Baker Mayfield gets it together, but doesn't get the whole thing together. He's not his team, obviously. Yeah. And Chubbs is great. He's gonna be running a lot this year. He's gonna be worn down. And I think I really do think Joe Burrow is going to come out gunning. I think he's going to come out and he's going to put up some great numbers this year. And I do think. Go ahead. Sorry.
This is gonna be interesting because if you can see facial expressions, Dre has been
I know.
ready to
He's
go.
very disappointed.
I'm gonna agree with you in the fact that the Ravens win the division, and I think it's because Lamar Jackson, I think, is gonna be even better than he was last year, and that's scary because he was the MVP. But I think the Steelers, as old as Roethlisberger is, that team is still locked down defensively. They have one of the best defenses in the whole league. And the thing about Roethlisberger is he's so old and he's not very mobile, but he does not get sacked a lot because of how amazing the team in front of him is.
That's fine, but you can't tell me and say he's never going to get sacked. And
Yeah,
all it takes is one sack and he's done.
Nobody ever never gets sacked, but I feel like this team still has they still have guys like Juju Smith-Schuster on offense, and I know over the years Le'Veon Bell, especially Antonio Brown, like all these guys on offense losing and they lose, and obviously you feel like this team isn't going to go anywhere, but I just feel like this team could get anchored by their defense, and Roethlisberger, as old as he is, he's still a quality quarterback. I'm not saying he's an elite quarterback, but he's good enough to get the job done. And I feel like the Steelers will come second in this division, and my bold pick is that Joe Burrow's team is coming last. I feel like the Cleveland Browns beat him out just because I think Baker Mayfield's going to finally wake up. Like last season, he had more commercials than touchdowns thrown at one point. And I feel like this is finally the year that Cleveland Browns wake up. I feel like that coach, when OBJ was very frustrated, wasn't getting the ball as much in the offense as he wishes he would. I feel like taking all that into account, I think the Browns are going to succeed more. I think they're going to come third. I think it's going to be very tight between Pittsburgh and the Browns. I think both of them are going to be the worlds ahead of the division.
Yeah, I think
Joe Burrow's team comes last.
I think sorry, just before you continue. I think Kitchens was holding the team back.
Absolutely.
And they
100%.
got rid of Kitchens. They bring in the guy who they originally wanted to bring in. I can't remember his name. It's
really long and complicated.
Yeah. So I think he gives the players a little more freedom and he's a little more understanding. Like, listen, he's probably going to come and say, guys, we're down, 24-6? We don't care. We're playing the Baltimore Ravens. We're not expected to win this game. We're gonna take this game. We're going to use it as a learning lesson, and we're going to bounce back next week. Labi, your thoughts on this division?
Yeah, I think I agree with you guys. Baltimore's winning the division, although I will say I don't think it's going to be as dominant as maybe some people expect. I think they can drop. I think they might drop some divisional games, I think they'll win the division. Pittsburgh reminds me about like what San Francisco might have been last year. Where I think that Pittsburgh's defense, the only teams that were better defensively were the Patriots and the 49ers.
Yeah.
And the Patriots' defense obviously took a step back because all of their players opted out.
Yeah.
They basically only have Stephon Gilmore right now. And the 49ers are going to be elite as ever on defense. I think the Steelers, like the Minka Fitzpatrick trade was so clutch.
Yeah.
People don't realize how good he is. The Steelers' defense is very, very good. And on offense, you have Smith-Schuster. He's in the last year of his contract, so he's going to be playing for money.
Playing his money. Wants money.
And they can run the ball pretty well. James Conner was a very effective back. I think a lot of people weren't sure what was going to happen when Le'Veon left, and James Conner came in and did a good job.
Up.
And so I don't think they need Big Ben to play the way he did before his injury. They just need him to be a game manager. And we talk about Jimmy Garoppolo and how is he going to be able to do it. You know, I think the people would trust Big Ben to be a game manager a lot more because of, you know, he's a Super Bowl caliber, you know, very experienced quarterback. And so I think that Pittsburgh and Cleveland are going to do very well this year. I think Cleveland's finally going to sort of figure out their potential. And I think with 3 wildcard teams this year, I think you look at Miami, New England, New York, Jets, I don't think they're going to be wildcard teams.
Jets?
You could see... I think you could see, like, because in the NFC East there isn't a lot of talent, I think you could see Cleveland and Pittsburgh both being potential wildcard teams, or it being very close for them. Yeah. And so I think those two are neck and neck. Cincinnati will win games, but you can't just add a quarterback and expect everything to be fixed. I think that Burrow will play well, but I think that they still need to keep building a team around him. And I think the expectation this year is to just give Joe Burrow that experience. I think he'll play well. He might very well win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I think if he could very well earn that. But I still think Cincinnati wins like maybe 4 games.
I'm sticking with mine. I'm saying Pittsburgh's at the basement.
It's a bold prediction, but you could definitely see it happen.
Obviously, I could see it going completely 180 on me, and Cleveland's there at the bottom, chilling 0-16 again. I'd be very happy with that. I'll have a parade myself. But, yeah, I'm sticking with it.
Moving on to the AFC South, you have the Colts, the Jaguars, the Titans, and the Houston Texans. I'll open this one up.
This one's tough. This is a tough division.
This is a very tough
Not
division.
because of how good they are, it's because of how bad they are.
Well,
in my opinion.
Jacksonville,
No.
1-15.
Yeah.
Put it down.
Well, that's nice.
And I'm being generous,
Yeah.
giving them a win.
Yeah.
Like, they could be an 0-16
Especially
type
with
team.
losing Fournette. There's nothing else on that team.
They have nobody. They traded everyone away. They traded Yannick Ngakoue away.
Yeah.
They traded the other. I think it was Telvin Smith.
Yeah, it's someone like I know.
Maybe I might be getting that name wrong, but they traded their starting safety as well. And they just don't have anybody.
They have nothing.
So getting rid of them.
They have a team.
Yeah, well,
Houston made the playoffs last year.
That's about it. Choked a 24 lead.
But
21.
They lost Hopkins.
Yeah.
Like, I trust Deshaun Watson. I don't trust Bill O'Brien. And so and then with
and he was made GM of the team too.
Yeah, exactly. And then with Tennessee, they were very good last year.
Yeah.
Are they still going to be that good? Do I trust Derrick Henry to be the guy?
Who's the quarterback?
Do I trust Ryan Tannehill to be the guy? So I think there's some question marks around Tennessee in terms of do you trust what they're going to do it again? And the Colts team is perfect except for a quarterback. If they had Andrew Luck, I'd be taking the Colts and I'd be very confident about it. I don't know if I trust Phillip Rivers, especially the year he had last year. Like, he had weapons in LA, in San Diego, LA. He had weapons with the Chargers, and he was throwing picks like it was crazy. Yeah. And so if he does that in Indy, he's not going to be successful. So it comes down between Indy, Tennessee, and Houston. Which team do I trust the most? Because I don't trust any of them. Yeah. Which team do I trust the most? And I genuinely still don't know who to pick. I think it's a toss-up between Tennessee and Houston. I think that Houston wins the division in spite of Bill O'Brien being an absolute stooge because I trust Deshaun Watson the most.
He's an idiot.
I think the Titans could make a playoff as a wild card team, but I'm going with Houston.
My pick for the division, I think I trust Deshaun Watson too, and obviously the team trusts. They just signed the extension, so obviously they trust him to be the guy too. But I just don't. I don't see. DeAndre Hopkins was probably one of my favorite wide receivers to watch.
He's unbelievable.
He's unbelievable. Losing him for basically nothing. They really got nothing to help them win now.
That was a terrible
Maybe
trade.
draft picks in the future. Those are, I don't know if those are going to turn into anything, but
I feel Bill O'Brien drafted, probably not.
Probably definitely not. I feel like the Titans win this division just because of how dominant Derrick Henry is, and I feel like Tannehill's a serviceable quarterback. I feel like he's not
solid game manager.
Yeah, he's solid game manager. Like he's not a bad quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He's just
there. He's like Big Ben. He's a game manager,
and he won't throw the picks that I think Phillip
exactly.
Rivers
because he's a smart quarterback in the sense that he doesn't make risky plays that could lose you the possession.
He's pretty cool under pressure. Like, he's pretty calm under pressure.
Well, I mean, they took down Baltimore in the playoffs.
Yeah. They made it to the AFC Championship game. Yeah.
I feel like just because of that, I trust the Titans more than I trust Texans because I feel like the Titans will make more right decisions than the Texans. And I feel like if the Texans had Hopkins, it's a whole new discussion. I think Texans win the division, but I feel like Deshaun Watson's getting left out to dry there. And I feel like
that's definitely a huge skill.
And in terms of the Colts, I agree with you where they have a solid team around. So like Phillip Rivers is not going to turn you into a championship-winning team. Like that's not what's going to happen.
They'll win you some games.
Yeah, I think it's going to be relatively close between those three teams. I think the Titans edge the other two teams out. I just feel like I just trust that team more. Like how Labi said, I don't trust any of those teams, but of all of them, I trust the Titans slightly more. Yeah. That's why I'm taking.
Who's the final team in that division?
Jacksonville.
Okay, forget about that.
Jackson.
I hate the Colts organization for what they did to one of their arguably best quarterbacks in recent history. Absolutely leaving him out to dry, treating him like garbage, and his fans booed him in his last day there. If Jacksonville had some talent, I'd put the Colts at the very bottom because they deserve nothing of happiness.
Yeah.
But Jacksonville is Jacksonville. Saxonville is not going anywhere.
Well, they don't have any of those players anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be Jacksonville, Colts, Houston, then
Tennessee
Yeah,
at the top.
Tennessee.
Yeah,
I
Tennessee
think
at the
I
top.
think Tennessee is going to turn to an extremely dominant running team with Derrick Henry being an absolute he's huge and he's fast and he can take a beating. Like you said, with losing Hopkins,
Yeah,
that's arguably that was Deshaun Watson's best.
Yeah,
And
that was the number one option.
That was his option. That was his guy.
Yeah.
The Hopkins option. Like, and now that you lose him for what, like you said, basically absolutely nothing, which is an absolute terrible move by GM Bill O'Brien, who is arguably one of the worst Texans coach.
I don't know. It's also
Football
Yeah,
coach.
I don't know how. Let alone got a promotion. Like
He
I
got a
think
promotion and another contract.
probably should have gotten
extension.
fired. But
So
yeah, there you go.
it goes. Yeah, I think Houston wins some games. I think Deshaun Watson wins some games for his team, but Derrick Henry, right?
Yeah.
And Tannehill, like you said, managing and the running game is going to be absolutely nuts this year.
And I think the final division, we can be pretty brief on it. Chiefs, Denver, Las Vegas Raiders, and the LA Chargers. Chiefs?
Yeah, Chiefs.
crazy Chiefs. Yeah.
Chiefs. Who else in that division?
Denver, Las Vegas, and the
I
Chargers.
think what's gonna be interesting is the match is like who's gonna come second. It's obviously the Chiefs.
Who do you have coming second?
I think. Listen, the Broncos could have been a surprise, but they lost Von Miller, who's so important to their defense. There's no way they do it without him. Like, he's the anchor of that defensive, and they had a good defense. It's a pretty solid defense.
And I'd say also the Chargers I was looking at, and then they lose Derwin James for the season. So you're talking about two key losses for those players. Like, they're the defensive leaders of both of those teams are done for the year.
And I feel like the Raiders are the definition of a slightly below average team. Like
the Raiders are the definition of an 8-8.
Yeah,
team.
like
just a mad team.
They're a team that if they go 8-8, you're a fan base that you're relatively okay. Like there's never. Like,
never a surprise.
You're never scared to play the Raiders. It's just like, oh, the Raiders are on the schedule. It's not a team that you watch out and game plan that much for. That's why
Chiefs are
it's going to be an absolute toss-up for second place. I feel like the Chiefs blow away the division. It's not going to be close, and it really could come down to like.
Who's the last team? The Chargers,
Chargers, Denver, and the Vegas
Vegas
Raiders.
I think Denver's coming second at the division.
They could.
I think honestly, I think the Chargers come second just because of the amount of pieces.
But you lose your quarterback basically.
Yeah, but I just feel like I just don't trust Vegas. Like they never the Raiders never really get it done.
Yeah, I don't trust Derek Carr either.
And the Broncos are just so they're such an average team, and their defense will kind of like help them out. And now that they lose Von Miller, I just feel like that's.
I'd say I watched Hard Knocks, and the Chargers impressed me in the series, and I think the Derwin James injury is a big hit though, and I still think the Raiders have talent. I mean, I don't know, they have a big decision to make about Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Because like, I think a lot of people thought he was elite, but he hasn't really shown it.
They thought he was their guy.
He's in like a gray area right now.
He's very much a middle tier quarterback, and so they have to decide whether or not they're going to pay him the money.
I think if you're Derek Carr, this is a make or break year.
Oh, it's a huge year for Derek Carr.
Also, if you're KC, every time you play these guys, it's like a warm up for the real games. In my opinion, I think Mahomes is just going to use this as experience.
Such an easy division.
Oh my goodness.
They're a dominant team, and they have an easy division on top of that.
Yeah,
so,
it's ridiculous.
Just for time here, because this is we're going a bit long on this podcast, but to just wrap up football talk, Super Bowl predictions. So, who makes the Super Bowl? Who wins the Super Bowl?
I think the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. I think the main competition they're gonna have in their own conference would be the Ravens.
Yeah.
I think hopefully they meet in the conference finals for that. I don't want to see like a second round match between them. I think that'd be pretty boring. I would be very exciting if they were in the conference finals together. And I think they make it to the finals. I think they win it, but I think they play the Saints in the finals. I think Breeze is hungry. I think he gets his team over the hump. Like after 3 brutal postseasons, I feel like he's over that. I feel like he doesn't want that to happen again. He's gonna do whatever it takes to win. I feel like he gets them there, and I think the Chiefs disappoint him and win it all.
I agree. You know what? I'm gonna go Chiefs and Saints in the finals. I think Kansas City wins it. I think obviously defending a title, no matter what it is one of the hardest things you can possibly do as a professional athlete. Man, does Mahomes look great out there! Like his last game. 24 for 32, 211 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I remember watching that game. It's like 7-0 Texans, 7-0, and then I'm like, oh damn, what happened to the Chiefs? And they come back and score 31 in a row. And
unanswered.
That's just how explosive that offense is.
Then you can argue, but they gave up Like they got it to 20 points. Yeah, and they didn't get any further.
Yeah.
Like I think KC is just the.
Yeah.
They're honestly, if they keep going like this, they'll be the new Patriots.
Yeah.
Like with Brady.
They could be the next football dynasty. It's in their hands. The only thing that could stop them, in my opinion, is injuries. I think that's the only way the Chiefs.
If Mahomes
stop
gets
this.
injured, if it's like a very if it's upper body, it could be the end. It could be it. Like that could be it for KC.
For the sake of being different, because I mean, I'm looking at who else other than Kansas City could make. I think the AFC is way deeper. I think if you look at the NFC, it's pretty wide open, and so I want to make a somewhat bold prediction. I think the Saints are a good choice, and I can definitely see them making the Super Bowl. I don't think the Cowboys have what it takes.
Nah.
Not yet.
I don't think Green Bay are as complete of a team to get all the way to a Super Bowl.
Nope.
And I don't think San Francisco is going to be able to get back there.
Wow.
I'm going to go bold prediction, and I'm going to say that the Super Bowl is Baltimore Ravens and Seattle Seahawks.
That's bold. That's pretty cool.
That is very bold. I like
And
it.
that would come down to Lamar Jackson.
Battle of the
And
Birds.
that is me having faith in Lamar Jackson because I think the Ravens' defense is better than the Chiefs' defense. And I think that...
And they're still pretty well put together on offense.
And they have weapons on offense, and I think that Lamar Jackson showed last year that he can throw the ball a lot better than people ever gave him credit. Like people joke, pretty good for a running back.
That is so ballsy.
And I think that Baltimore is going to be pissed off that they didn't even get the chance to play the Chiefs in the playoffs because they got knocked out by the Titans. And I think that they'll get back, and I think that but then who do I think to win? Because I think that Baltimore is going to be scraping by that division because they're going to have hard matchups.
Fatigued after that playoff run.
Buffalo is going to be a tough out in the playoffs.
Buffalo's going to be a really good team this year.
Houston or Tennessee is going to be there are a lot of sleeper picks in the AFC, and I think less so in the NFC. So I think that whoever gets out of the NFC might have a little bit more of a rest. I trust Russell Wilson. I think the Seahawks win one more Super Bowl. I'm going to say Seahawks.
So?
Seahawks beat the Ravens.
Wow, you say Seahawks against Baltimore.
I think Seahawks win the Super Bowl.
Wow, that's really off script there. You're supposed to follow the script, Labi.
Well, I didn't want to be the third guy to say the Chiefs are a dynasty, but in 9 months when the Chiefs win another Super Bowl, we'll see why you don't go bold prediction and you go with
But hey,
the
I'm all
favorites.
for the bold prediction. I have Pittsburgh in the bottom of the division.
Seahawks are still a great team, though. There's a chance Seahawks beat up New Orleans. I just think, end of the story, that the Chiefs are going to make it to the finals. It's anyone that other conference is what's going to happen. I feel like it could be a toss up between Packers, Saints, all those teams.
No, absolutely.
But I agree. I think Baltimore will be the Kansas City's only opposition, really, if they make the playoffs. And I hope they meet in the final, the championship game.
Yeah, because I think that would be a fantastic game. So there you go. You heard it here first. The Chiefs or Seahawks are winning the Super Bowl. By that, we probably mean the Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl.
Seahawks are not going to make it, but that's okay.
There you go. You got to be bold when you're podcasts on the rise. You got to make those bold calls. So there you go. There's the scoop in the NBA, the NHL, and the NFL. We'll be back again with the next podcast where we'll be at that point probably wrapping up the playoffs in the NBA and the NHL.
Wow.
We'll be looking at some other leagues. The NFL will be there. Even maybe talk some more soccer. The Premier League started this weekend.
Blue Jays are heating up over there.
Blue Jays could be looking at some playoff spots as well. So, when these playoffs get done, there's still going to be a lot of topics to talk about in the world of sports.
Lots of sports going on, guys.
We thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Dre, we thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
We'll hopefully have you on again in the future. And once again, thank you for listening. This has been Benchwarmer Sports Talk Podcast. On behalf of Dre and Jacob, I'm Labi, saying thank you for listening and signing off today.